All right, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Rambling Men Sports Podcast. I know we've been away for a while, but it is football season now. Got a new, not a new face, but I got my friend Nader with me. James could not make it this week. I'm mad at him right now, to tell you the truth. I just told Nader he bailed on me every day this week. I get it at first. He was sick. He claimed he was sick. And then last night he bailed on me at the last second. Not last second, but he bailed on me. Today he says I'm 100% going to do it today. Bails on me again for a fantasy football draft. He's leaving in the morning to go to Charlotte to watch our Mountaineers play. But anyway, so I had to bring on a guest, which I was going to do anyway. But Nader, thank you for coming on at the very last minute. How you doing, my man?
Doing pretty good, man. I was going to say, James, how could you do that? You can't do that.
I know. I'm mad at him right now.
I'm doing pretty good, though. I'm pumped for football season. It's NFL, college football, fantasy football, all three put into one realm. So it's an exciting time right now, to say the least. So
absolutely. And I wanted to bring you on because I had you on for, obviously, the World Cup. And I remember you saying, I can do more than just the World Cup. You know, I can talk football, NBA, whatever. And I didn't ignore it, but I was like, all right, man, yeah. And then sure enough, when a day I need you roll around, you come through. But I also it makes sense because you are a huge Alabama fan. You are the reigning champion, so it kind of makes sense to have you on to kick off the new season, so to speak.
Yes, sir.
All right.
It's an exciting time. We got Louisville coming up in a couple days on Saturday, so it's an interesting first test. And Louisville, some of their players have been talking smack, so adds fuel to the fire to this game. I'm expecting maybe a 30-point blowout by Alabama.
I won't be shocked at all. But we got some topics first. We'll get into our college football predictions later in the show. But first off, we got to talk about Urben Meyer. We haven't talked about him yet on the show for the most part. This scandal going on. What do you think, Nader? You said you were out of the country when this first broke, but have you been paying attention to it much since?
A little bit. I just hear one of his assistant coaches was part of an assault case, a domestic assault case.
An alleged, yes.
And Urban Meyer apparently had knowledge about it, and he kept him on the coaching staff until this offseason when another issue came about. But the issue with him is whether Ohio State should keep him or not keep him, and that's depending on whether he knew about it or not. So
yes.
That's all I know about that.
Yes, reports coming out from Brett McMurphy, who doesn't work for ESPN anymore, but ESPN, I hope, paid him every dollar they could scrap after they fired him, and then they bring him on because he's the one that broke this news. I hope he took him for every penny they're worth. But, so yeah, like you said, an alleged domestic violence incident that occurred back in 2015 involving his wide receivers coach, Zach Smith, and Smith's wife, I believe. And Urban Meyer said, I believe at Big Ten Media Day, he had no knowledge of the situation. He fired him for a recent, kind of like a second incident, or something like that. And reports are coming out that he did know about it. And it gets worse and worse. It just feels like every time they unravel this. But I am curious, though, Nader, if you think really Urban Meyer should be, he did get a 3-game suspension, but I'm curious if you think it should have been more. Should he have been fired? What do you think?
I honestly think he should be fired. If I'm looking at a neutral point of view, I think he should have been fired. These are situations where the University of Ohio State, because he is representing the University of Ohio State, this is a situation where they need to make an example out of someone. And someone as big as him should not be just doing whatever he wants or shouldn't have like a free pass or whatever. I do think they should use him as an example, and I feel like 3 games is a little bit too light. If anything, they should at least suspend him for the whole year and then let him come back next year. But I feel like 3 games is too light. I think this sort of tells me that Ohio State wants to just at least keep him on board, and at least they want to have a chance to win a national championship because they know if they get rid of him, that goes all hopes of potentially winning a national championship.
Yeah, I'm not on that boat. I mean, he's not the one that's involved. Urban Meyer's not. Now, Zach Smith, yeah, he's a piece of shit and should be fired. Even more stuff has come out against him. I saw something about sex toys being delivered to the football offices. There's text messages that says he even admitted to beating up his wife, I believe. Going to strip clubs on recruiting visits. Who apparently Tom Herman, head coach at Texas, is involved in. But that's a different issue. But just not looking good. I don't think, unless something comes out where it's just too massive, like what happened at Baylor, like the players were getting involved and they just swept it all under the rug, then yeah, I think you got to look at firing Urban Meyer. But right now, it's just an assistant coach. Right now, all Urban Meyer did was just lie about not knowing about it. Not a huge deal, but I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
Isn't this sort of similar to the Penn State situation where Jerry Sandusky had this big case going on, and then they were saying whether the head coach Joe Paterno, I don't know if he was alive or not during this time, had knowledge of it, and whether he should have been fired. Because I think didn't he get fired due to this?
Yeah, he did, and then he died like 2 or 3 months later.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying with Urban Meyer. I feel like if he had knowledge of this, that makes the university look bad, where you had someone, an assistant coach, committing these kind of crimes, and you're keeping him on board the staff. As big as Urban Meyer is, I know he didn't do it himself, but he had knowledge of it. He's having a criminal on his coaching staff, and I feel like just to him getting away with a 3-game suspension, whereas Joe Paterno in years past, I know. Well, I'm not going to say which case was worse than the other, but that was still a bad case. Yeah. And he got fired for that. And I believe Joe Paterno is just as big, or if not bigger than Urban Meyer as far as like on a grand scheme of things. But I feel like 3 games was too light, but maybe firing him would be too harsh. So that's why if you want to come down the middle, I feel like the best thing is just suspend him for the year and then let him come back next year.
That's actually a really fair point, I think, with the Penn State comparison. They're slightly different, obviously, but you make a good point. He knew about it, didn't do anything. Obviously, the situations were much worse, but you got a point, and it's immoral. And I'm sure he's got a morality clause in his contract, so whether or not the university thinks that was immoral, I guess, is up to them. But I think you do make a very good point, and I do agree, and this is actually our poll question, do you think Urban Meyer's 3-game suspension was a fair punishment? I'm going to say no. I think you've convinced me. It should have been a little bit longer. I'd say maybe 5 or 6 games at the least. And I do like your idea about a whole season. You don't fire him, because I do think that's a little harsh. I don't know. But maybe you just, suspend him for an entire year. I do like that idea.
Yeah, potentially just for the whole year, then he can come back the following year. I'm trying to think. There was an incident like this that happened a couple of years ago. I don't know who the coach was, where he got suspended for the whole year, and then he came back. Maybe it was in the NFL. I don't remember it correctly, but I feel like this would be a good punishment, because at the end of the day, he is representing Ohio State University, and Ohio State's much bigger than just football. You're still an educational institution where you're going to want other students to come in. If you have these kind of crimes and these situations looming, it's going to maybe just tarnish the reputation of Ohio State. So I feel like there's a lot of different ways you can go with this, but I feel like 3 games is a little bit too light, and I feel like in this situation, a 1-year punishment would have been fair enough.
Yeah, I think we're both in the agreement that the suspension at least was a little too light.
Yes, sir.
And I can already hear it now. I hate Ohio State. I'm sure you hate Ohio State as well, Nader, with Urban Meyer going back to his SEC days. But I can already see the narrative now. They played TCU week 3 in Fort Worth. I can already see the narrative that they go down to Fort Worth and lose. They get Urban Meyer back. They win, however many games in a row, 9 or 10 in a row. I forget how many it would be. And, selection committee comes around and it's playoff time. Like, hey, man, this team's been a completely different team since Urban Meyer came back. I can see it now where they'll let them in. Even though I don't know about a bad loss to TCU, but TCU shouldn't be as good as Ohio State this year.
So that's their hardest game on their first 3 games, correct?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I can definitely see that where, if they lose that TCU game, and then they go on like an 8-game winning streak, and that seems to be enough for the selection committee because they do look at the hottest team at the time, and if they're on an 8-game winning streak, that could potentially get over maybe a 1-loss SEC team or something like that.
Yeah.
So
I agree. So let's move on to our NFL, where our boy. We're both huge Green Bay Packers fans. I wanted to actually save this for next week, but I thought it was prudent since we're both Packers fans that we talk about this. But Aaron Rodgers signs a mega contract extension, and I mean mega deal. 4 years, $134 million extension to stay in Green Bay. Deal includes $103 million guaranteed, $80 million by March. What are your thoughts?
Well deserving, I feel like. I know a lot of people might not like it when I say this, but I feel like Aaron Rodgers is the most talented quarterback in the history of the game as far as just pure natural ability, being able to like scramble, throw on the run. I know all the Tom Brady fanboys are going to hate that because he's won 5 rings, but come on now. Tom Brady's part of the system. I think if you put Aaron Rodgers in that system, in New England, he can win 6-7 Super Bowls just as well. So that's a different topic. But
you had me in agreement until the system. I'm not a huge believer in the Brady's a system quarterback, but that's a different argument.
I do respect Brady, but I do think Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback.
Yes.
He's more talented. And now he's 35 years old, correct?
He will be.
So he's still not hit that. Like if we're seeing Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, who played till 40, and Drew Brees, they all played until their like early 40s, late 30s. With this deal for Aaron Rodgers, this will get him to 39 years old. I feel like this is a very fair deal for him and very deserving. And it's been going on for the past 6 to 8 months where there's been contract disputes and stuff like that. So it's finally good to get this out of the way going into the season. And they extended Devontae Adams as well. So I feel like this is a very promising year for the Packers. And
at least for the next 4 years with both of them under contract.
Yes, so it's going to be very promising with the Packers going forward, and I think just on the deal itself, very deserving. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I want to mention, when this first came out, I immediately was like, shit. Because every report that kind of came out, it sounded like he was willing to take a little bit less just to not kill the team in terms of cap space. And I thought, okay, maybe we can get him for $20 million. Take a little bit where we still give him enough, but it's a little bit less than what other quarterbacks are making. And this came out and it's $33.5 million averaged out, and you're like, oh shit, this is gonna kill our cap space. And then I read it, and it's like, oh, $80 million by March. That leaves 90 whatever. It's like, I think it's really broken down to where it's more of like a 6-year contract because he had 2 years left on this deal that he's on, and then plus the 4. So it's really like a 6-year contract. And this $80 million is spread out. Or I'm sorry, the 103 guaranteed he just signed is spread out over these next 6 years with $80 million this first year. So I'm like, oh, well, that's only 90 some million, or however much. Oh no, I'm sorry, it wasn't the guaranteed. It was the total number, which was like 175 million over 6 years. And I said, oh, well, 80 million in the first year, that leaves 90-some million over 5. And I calculated it's roughly $19 million per year. So it's about the same. Green Bay wanted to pay, show them, they take care of their guys. They always overpay to keep their guys. That's the way Green Bay does it. And then it also helped Rodgers where, hey, give me some more talent maybe after this first year where the cap's a little bit more flexible.
I do, yeah. I definitely look at the cap space part of it as well, and you never want to be on that end where you're limited in what you can get, especially when it comes to the Packers situation where we've always had secondary issues, we've always had defensive issues. So yeah, when you said the $30 million per year, that does hurt, but I like how you mentioned it's $80 million for that year one, so we just get that 1 year out of the way.
Yep.
And then going forward, we have more cap space to where we can fill other needs on the team, which there are a lot of needs on the team if we want to compete for a Super Bowl.
Absolutely. And this next year, I think 2019, it frees up. This deal actually, believe it or not, frees up $15 million in cap space. So he signed a 30. $134 million deal over 4 years, but it actually freed up, the way it's structured, freed up cap space in the future. So this gives Green Bay flexibility to go out there and get some guys, help them out, stuff like that.
A win-win situation for the quarterback and for the front office as well for flexibility purposes.
Yeah, so. And I'm sure they're not the only franchise that's going to start doing this.
Oh, yeah. I think you might see that with Brady coming up. If Brady wants an extension, or if Drew Brees decides to stick around, he wants an extension, or Philip Rivers.
Yep.
Some of these older guys, they might just, pay as much the first year and then have it a little bit cooler in the following years after that.
Yeah, absolutely. But so this brings up a poll question. But first, I'll just mention $80 million. Baseball players don't make that much. They don't have a salary. They don't even have a salary cap. You're a soccer guy. Do the soccer guys even make close to this money, just in terms of salary, not endorsements?
No, I think. The highest paid are definitely Messi and Ronaldo. I don't think they make that much just off salary alone.
So then, this brings my poll question: do you think any professional athlete deserves to earn $80 million in less than a year?
It depends on what their worth is to that team. I think there's very few athletes in the world that I think are worth that. Like, for example, I feel like players like Messi or Ronaldo, when it comes to soccer, are very capable of being worth that, because you got to look at it this way. They're not just making your team better, they're making the value of the team go up too. Jersey sales go up. You have all these different outside, values going up. So I feel like that. LeBron James, I feel like, is worth every penny. So I feel like there's a very few handful of athletes that are worth that kind of money. NFL's perspective, Aaron Rodgers, I would say he's worth that too, just because if you have a quarterback on his level, you're always guaranteed at least a shot of the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So
I'm in total agreement. I'm in total agreement with a guy like him. I mean, just with him alone, I think gives Green Bay 10 wins right off the bat if he's healthy.
Absolutely. And then if you fix other needs like defense and give him more weapons, then you have yourself a legitimate Super Bowl opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So moving on, someone else just got paid, Odell Beckham Jr. $95 million over 5 years now makes him the highest paid wide receiver, averages out to about $19 million per year. What do you think? He wanted 20, and the Giants gave him 19. This honestly wasn't as bad of a deal as I thought it'd be.
Yeah, it's a good deal for both ends. Odell Beckham, this is his first contract, I believe, like his first big boy contract off the rookie deal. So he obviously needed to get paid. He's definitely one of the top 5 best wide receivers in the NFL. He does make a big difference for the Giants, as you saw last year. He went down, and as with them went the team. The team, I don't think won. They'll probably just won one game the whole season after he went. So I do agree that he is worth the deal. And I believe it was a fair deal on both ends, both from the front office point of view and both Odell Beckham's point of view.
Yeah, he definitely. First of all, I'd never pay a wide receiver this much money. I think they're divas. They really don't even translate to wins. I think it was Colin Cowherd showed like the top 8 wide receivers that make the most money. Most of them didn't even make the playoffs this year. Last year.
Here's something I'll look at Odell Beckham different than because he's in the same category with like Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, those kind of guys. But here's the thing that stands out with Odell Beckham. Odell Beckham is bigger than just a football player. It comes back to that value part. He sells a lot. He has a lot of jersey sales. I want to say he's probably top 3 in jersey sales when it comes to the NFL. He makes the Giants brand a much more bigger name on a global scale. He's hanging out with big-time athletes like Ronaldo, I don't know who else, LeBron James. He's hanging out with these kind of figures. That's just only going to make his name bigger, and that's going to make the Giants' name bigger as well, because those two are always tied together. So that's why I feel like he deserves a little bit more compared to like the likes of Julio Jones and maybe like a DeAndre Hopkins.
That's a fair point. And the biggest city in our country, New York, exactly. That exposure is huge for a guy like him.
Exactly. When you mention New York and that big of a market compared to like Atlanta or Houston, yes, definitely agree.
Okay, that's fair. So, poll question: do you think Odell Beckham Jr. should be the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL?
No. On that question, I say no.
Yeah,
Antonio Brown should be the highest paid.
I'll agree with that. So, other guys that didn't get new contracts and are currently holding out in their training camps, and week 1 is just next week, and they're still not on the field. Aaron Donald and Khalil Mack. No news on either front, especially Khalil Mack. It's sounding like the Raiders are honestly looking to get rid of him.
Yeah, I saw a report yesterday where they wanted 2 first-round picks, and
guess who has 2 first-round picks?
Say that again?
So guess who has 2 first-round picks next year?
Green Bay.
Green Bay. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. As my friend William Snoddy likes to say.
I saw that as well, and I'm 50-50 on that. I'm the kind of guy that doesn't like to give up first-round picks like it's nothing.
Yeah, I don't like to do it either.
And then the other thing is you got to pay the guy as well. You got to give him a big contract. So you're losing 2 things. You're losing cap space, and you're going to be losing draft picks. So if you're going to be getting someone like Khalil Mack, you better be getting good production out of him because you're going to be giving up a lot for him. Now I do believe he does deserve a contract. I do believe he is up there with like J.J. Watt as like the best interior defensive players in the whole NFL. So I do believe he should get paid.
He's actually an edge rusher.
Yes.
He's like Aaron Donald. I think is who you're thinking is in the interior.
Well, I was mentioning someone within the defensive line.
Oh, okay. I follow you.
Yeah.
But
and I think he deserves J.J. Watt kind of money if I had to say.
I actually do agree with you. I just said I wouldn't pay a wide receiver that kind of money. I would pay that kind of money for a player like Aaron Donald and Khalil Mack. I've always said, at least the last few years, the top, I'd say, 5 positions in the NFL are quarterback, left tackle, center, and pass rusher. If you got a pass rusher, I'd pay big money to all 4 of those positions. That's 4. Cornerback's the 5th, but I just went to the pass rusher. Each of these guys can rush the quarterback, especially Khalil Mack. Been in the league 4 years. Both been in the league 4 years. I know Khalil Mack has 40.5 sacks in 4 years. I don't know Aaron Donald. It's not quite that high, I would imagine, but they easily are 2 of the best defensive players in the game. I wouldn't hesitate to give them about $20 million. $20 million per year, done.
I would agree. When you mentioned the positions part, yes, because both those guys, I would say especially Aaron Donald, he clogs up running lanes and he becomes a nightmare for running backs. And if you're able to stop the running game, you're basically in control of everything you want to do. So I do agree with certain positions: quarterback, defensive end, defensive tackle, and then you said left tackle and center.
Left tackle and center, corner.
Yes, and I would agree. I would agree that those are the main positions. I do agree with the offensive line. As long as you have a good protection, you're able to run the ball, which opens up the offense. Quarterback has more time to make throws. I agree. I would probably agree that's the most important position on offense. And then defense, if you're able to rush the quarterback, put pressure on the quarterback, and disrupt running lanes, then you're always going to be in a good position to win.
Absolutely. I just had a question. I know. How do you feel about the Rams giving everyone else extensions before Aaron Donald? They've locked up Todd Gurley, Brandon Cooks, who hasn't even taken a snap for them yet.
I disagree with that. I'm not a fan of those moves. I do agree Todd Gurley should get paid.
Yeah.
I do think he's maybe top 2 or 3 best running backs in the league. Brandon Cooks is a head scratcher, especially coming off a sort of a mediocre season with the Patriots last year. And I don't know how much of an upgrade he's going to be over Sammy Watkins, who just left them. Aaron Donald, I would say, on the other hand, is a premier defensive player. I would say Aaron Donald should have been paid before Brandon Cooks should.
Yeah, easily. So, poll question, which player do you think is most likely to get a long-term deal by week 1, Aaron Donald or Khalil Mack?
Let's say Aaron Donald.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that I just read today, actually, that the Rams restructured Andrew Whitworth and Robert Woods' contract. So I think they're trying to get a deal done with Donald very soon.
And Andrew Whitworth, actually, speaking of, I'm glad you mentioned him. I do believe he's one of their biggest important players because he came over from Cincinnati the year before.
Yes.
And look what Todd Gurley did for their running game last year. Jared Goff had all the time in the world to, get the ball to his receivers and stuff like that. So him, and I think there was one other guy that came on the team on the line.
It was Robert Woods. Robert Woods was one of them.
Yeah, Robert Woods. So the Andrew Whitworth signing, I thought was a very important signing for their success last year, and I think this year they could be a very good Super Bowl contender, potentially.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you. There was something else I was going to mention. Oh, I know. I wanted to say, so Rams fans, I think, are getting excited that they could potentially have Aaron Donald locked up. Well, you got 2 minutes to relax until you got to pay Jared Goff, and that's going to be even more money.
Jared Goff's going to want more money. He said Robert Woods already got paid, correct?
Yeah. Robert Woods is in year 2 of his deal, yeah.
They just got Marcus Peters.
He's likely a rental.
Okay, so if he's a rental, then yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm like, you feel free to breathe. You can breathe. You got Aaron Donald locked up, but then you got to turn around and pay Khalil Mack. I'm sorry, not Khalil Mack. I looked at his name. Jared Goff. Yep. All right, so let's get into college football. There's college football on right now. I'm watching Northwestern and Purdue. But let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with the Heisman. Who is your preseason Heisman pick?
I would love for it to be Tua, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I'm going to go with the guy from Stanford.
Bryce Love?
Bryce Love.
That is, I believe, James's pick. He did send me his picks. Yeah. Yes, he did go with Bryce Love. His second guy was our Mountaineer favorite, Will Grier. So he does think Will Grier will be at the ceremony.
Stanford they do a good job of producing Heisman talents like Andrew Luck and Christian McCaffrey, but
Toby Gerhart.
They finish second though usually. I don't know if Andrew Luck did he win the Heisman?
No, I think he might have. I know for sure he finished second one year. He might have finished second both years. Just unfortunate. I mean, I kept, that's just one guy. I'm like, man, how did he not win? You're like, oh, Cam Newton 1 year, and then RG3 was pretty damn good. So.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah, so you think it's going to be Bryce Love. The only thing that worries me with Bryce Love is his health. He's banged up a lot.
Right. It depends. You can also put in a case for Tua. If Tua wins the job.
He was my pick, but I've recently changed it.
Okay, and then what about the Georgia quarterback, Jake Fromm?
I just don't think he's in a system that's going to, pad his stats. I think he's a great quarterback, don't get me wrong. But I think he's going to end up being, like a 25 touchdown kind of guy, and I just don't think that's enough. You know what I mean?
And the Washington quarterback's also another guy to look out for. Jake Browning, I believe.
Jake Browning, yes, sir.
Yeah.
But so my preseason,
some good names to look at.
Yeah, my preseason pick is Jonathan Taylor, the running back from Wisconsin. He was only a true freshman last year. And I think he was at the ceremony. He may have been 6th or 7th in the Heisman voting, but he was getting hype. He's rushing behind. He already rushed for, I think, 2,000 yards last year. He's rushing this year behind an offensive line that has 2 or 3 All-Americans. And I think all 3 of those guys are going to end up being first-round draft picks. So, he's going to have a damn good year. He ought to, if he's healthy.
Yeah, he definitely has the ingredients to be good. Only thing that might – I don't know how the Wisconsin schedule is shaped up, but Big Ten's pretty beefed up this year. So
He's in the Big Ten West, though, which is much more favorable.
Yeah.
So preseason Power 5 conference winners. Let's start in the ACC. Who you got?
Are we just picking one winner?
Yeah, just one winner.
Go with Clemson.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm going with Clemson as well. James is going with Clemson. I honestly don't see a team in the ACC that's going to contend with them. Florida State, I don't know what they're going to be without, what's his name, Jimbo Fisher.
Jimbo.
I think Boston College is an interesting team, but it's Boston College. I don't really know what to expect.
Miami, potentially.
I think Miami takes a slight step back. They don't have a quarterback. And
Okay.
they relied last year a lot on turnovers, and usually just that doesn't happen back-to-back years. You don't get a lot of turnovers one year, and then you get all the breaks again the next year. It usually doesn't work that way. You know what I mean?
Okay. But I would say Clemson as well. They have probably, they're saying, one of the best defensive lines ever in college football this year. So my pick to make, and I'll pick them to make the playoff as well.
Yeah.
Clemson.
We'll get into that later, but yeah, I got the same thing. I got Clemson, that defensive line. They got 4 guys who are probably going to be in the first round, and I know they're loaded with talent behind them. So they're going to be not only talented, their starters are going to be talented, they're going to be deep. So I do like Clemson to win the ACC. Big 12.
Oh, okay. So Baker Mayfield is not there anymore, so that opens it up a little bit. I feel like Texas might make a run at it, and I believe not Texas Tech. Oklahoma State's going to be good as always. They're always no.
Not really. They'll probably make a bowl game. I don't see them contending for the conference.
Okay, there was a sleeper team, and I believe it was might have been Texas Tech as a sleeper team.
I think you probably mean TCU. TCU's a team that's kind of been floating around, like, hey, we can make they can make a run.
I think the Big 12 is going to be a potential. It might be a surprising issue. I'm going to go with Oklahoma, but I'm not confident with that.
Yeah, that's who I had all offseason was Oklahoma. I bought into the hype, not the hype, but I'm like, until I see it, I got to believe it. But they've won the Big 12 like the last 7 years. I'm going to throw a curveball, though, and go with my Mountaineers. I hate doing it. I really do hate doing it. But if there's ever a year to knock off Oklahoma, I think it's this year. Baker's gone. Defensively, they don't really know what they got. Like everyone in the Big 12. West Virginia has the best quarterback in not only the conference, I think in the country. With Will Grier, we got a lot of offensive firepower. And sometimes in the Big 12, your best defense is having the better offense. And I think West Virginia is going to have that this year. So I don't like doing it, but I'm going to go with my Mountaineers. They get Oklahoma at home. They get TCU at home. And those are going to be probably the top 2 teams, 2 of the top 3 teams in the conference.
Okay. That's a fair prediction. I like that. Especially with Oklahoma, we don't know who their quarterback, what he's going to deliver and stuff like that. So there's some uncertainty with them, but I'm just going to go with the easy pick and just go with Oklahoma.
That's fair. I don't blame you at all. Big 10.
Big 10 is another tough conference. I'm going to go with Penn State this year.
Penn State. Expand on that. I'm curious. They just lost a ton of talent.
I believe their coach is very underrated coach. I don't know. Ohio State, okay, I feel like it's an open race. I feel like there's Wisconsin's going to be there. I feel like Wisconsin's going to come to the Big Ten championship. They're going to lose. I feel like Iowa's going to be a good team. I think Michigan's going to be a good team. Michigan State's going to be – they're going to bounce back this year. You got Ohio State and then Penn State, I feel like is going to be the team just because last year, I know they came really close to winning the conference last year, but they lost a head-scratching game to Ohio State, I believe. It was Ohio State and Michigan State, their 2 losses.
Who was that?
I believe their 2 losses last year was to Ohio State and Michigan State.
No. What was the team? Who was the team?
Penn State.
That sounds right.
Okay, and their games were very close. So
maybe Wisconsin. I don't know if they played Wisconsin, but yeah, they lost 2 games.
I believe it was Ohio State and Michigan State back-to-back weeks. And I feel like this year, I like their coach a lot. I do think their coach is top 3 in the country. I believe he's a very good coach. Yeah. Their recruiting has been really good the past 3 or 4 years. And I feel like this could be the year where they, in a wide-open Big Ten, where they get over the hump and they win the Big Ten.
I think that's a fair assessment. And I think they get Ohio State at home. I think they get Wisconsin at home. They get some guys at home. Trace McSorley is a good quarterback. I do worry about losing Saquon Barkley. They lost Deshaun Hamilton and Mike Gesicki, the tight end. So we'll see if McSorley is really all that or if he was just surrounded by some good guys.
Yeah, losing Barkley is going to be a big void to fill. So we'll see how they replace him.
Oh, I forgot about James's last 2 picks. So in the Big 12, he also went with our Mountaineers. He's also a WVU alum like me. I'm sure for the same reasons that I had. This year, though, he's going with Michigan to win the Big Ten. That's a team I flirted with at the very beginning when I was coming up with ideas for predictions, like back in March. Because I think this might be Harbaugh's best team, perhaps. That he gets a real quarterback this time in Shea Patterson. This team, I think, could be really good, but the schedule's tough. They got to go to Ohio State. They got to go, I believe, there's to Michigan State. Those are 2 tough road games. But I think they do get Penn State at home. I won't be shocked if they go about 10-2 and get in the New Year's Six bowl game, and that's what I'm expecting. But I'm not picking them to win the conference. I'm actually going to go with Wisconsin. I'm going with the Badgers.
Okay, that's a fair prediction on that one.
The schedule is favorable. They got obviously the Big Ten West is favorable, but the road game against Iowa I think could be very tricky. I think Iowa is like the 5th team. I won't be really that surprised if they manage to win the Big Ten. I think they could have a good year.
They're one of those sneaky teams that always gives headaches. Like they gave a headache, I think, to Ohio State last year. They beat them.
They beat somebody last year. No, you're right. They did beat Ohio State. They crushed them.
Yeah, so they're one of those sneaky teams that just comes up big in big games, and they're definitely a team to look out for. Also, I think a sneaky team might be Nebraska.
Yeah, I think that's another one. I think Scott Frost might need another year or 2. I don't really know what to expect with first-year coaches. Another team. There's so many teams. There's 4 teams, I think, 6 teams overall, but 4 teams in the East that could easily win the league. Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State could all win the Big Ten. Then you got Wisconsin and I think Iowa in the West that could get it done. This is a wide-open league, like you said. I'm going with Wisconsin, though. They got my Heisman hopeful, Jonathan Taylor at running back. They got probably the best offensive line in the country. We know they're going to play good defense. Like, death taxes, Wisconsin playing good defense and running the ball well. Like, those are things you can bank on. I'm going with the Badgers. I'm not that confident in it, but I don't like the drama surrounding Ohio State so far the last few weeks.
Okay.
That was my pick for the longest time, Ohio State. But I'm like, nope, I'm switching it up. I thought Michigan State. I'm like, no, I'm going with Wisconsin. That offensive line is really good.
Okay, that's a fair prediction.
Where am I at? Pac-12.
Gonna go with Washington.
Yeah, this is actually a clean sweep. James is going with Washington, and so will I. This conference I think is going to come down to Washington and Stanford. I don't know about you. I don't really see a third team in the league in the conference this year. I think USC is kind of like a distant 3rd, maybe even 4th.
How good is Washington State this year? I remember they had a decent team last year.
They did, but they lost their starting quarterback.
Okay, and how about UCLA?
I wouldn't expect. They do have Chip Kelly now. Who knows? First-year head coach, though, I don't know what to expect.
I feel like this is a Washington versus potentially USC kind of Pac-12, but I do like Washington just because of their quarterback.
I'm actually going with Arizona to win the Pac-12 South. Khalil Tate, very good quarterback.
Okay.
Or not very good, very talented quarterback. Good runner. But yeah, just going to be a weird year, I think, in the Pac-12 South. But yeah, I like Washington. They get Stanford at home. They open with Auburn. The game with Auburn is going to decide if they're a playoff team. I think you would agree with me. If they win, I'd say, okay, this team's legit. If not, okay, well, they're still probably going to win the Pac-12, get to a New Year's Six bowl game, probably the Rose Bowl.
I agree with that, yes.
Okay. But yeah, Chris Peterson, I'd argue probably top 5 coach in the country at Washington.
I agree. Ever since his Boise State years, yes.
Absolutely. All right, so last but not least, your SEC. I already know the pick. Go ahead.
You want to say it for me?
Alabama Crimson Tide.
Yeah, there we go.
You're gonna make me feel stupid if it was Georgia or something, but it was gonna be Alabama.
Is that what you got?
Yeah, I do. Clean sweep again. I got Alabama. You got Alabama. James has Alabama.
It's going to come down to Alabama, Georgia, I believe, in the SEC championship. I feel like Alabama has a very favorable schedule this year. Auburn's at home. Mississippi State's supposed to be a better team this year, but I don't feel like they're ready for Alabama at home. Only tough team, I think, on the road is LSU, as always, but LSU is not what LSU was 3-4 years ago.
Do you remember Taylor Mason?
I do remember, yes.
Okay, I'm in a group text with him. He tries to tell me every single year how LSU's a tough game. I'm not disputing it's not a tough game, but I'm like, LSU's fake. They have no quarterback. Until I see otherwise, they have no quarterback. Alabama's going to beat them every single time. We beat them, but they always give us. We have to earn our win against them every single time. No, yeah, I'll give you that. I'm not saying it's an easy win, but it's a game like we ought to win. It's probably going to take all 4 quarters, though.
Yes, something like that.
Yeah. So that's it for the Power 5. So let's go ahead and go to our playoff participants. 1 through 4, who you got?
In any order, or am I going in specific order?
Go 1 through 4.
Let's go with Bama 1, Clemson 2, Georgia 3.
2 SEC teams again.
I say 2 SEC. I think Georgia will be undefeated when they lose to Bama. I think they'll both be undefeated when they play each other, and Georgia's going to lose.
Okay.
If I had to pick a 4th team, it's a toss-up between I'm going to go with Washington.
Okay. So Big Ten gets left out again.
I'm going to say yes. I think the Big Ten's very strong this year, and I feel like they're going to beat each other up, and one of those teams are going to be left out. So I'm going to go with Washington.
I think that's a fair assessment with the Big Ten being left out. James has Bama, Clemson, Michigan, and Georgia.
Okay.
So he's got the what conference would that be? He's got the Big 12 left out. Obviously, he's got
in the Pac-12. Yes,
Pac-12 left out. That's what it is. Okay. So that's his. So and then let's go ahead and go with your national championship.
I'm going to go with Bama beating Washington, and I'm going to go with Clemson beating Georgia, and then I'm going to go Bama over Clemson.
Bama again. James has the same thing. Bama over Clemson, part 3. He says Bama wins.
Part 4. We beat him last year in the playoff game.
Okay, yeah. I think he meant national championship, but yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Part 4. I went a little different. I have Bama, Clemson, 1 and 2, Wisconsin 3, and Washington 4.
Okay.
I got. Don't get too mad. I don't like picking defending champions. I think Tua's a superstar, but I don't really know if him being so electric in the national championship is because he's the real deal, which I think he is, or was Kirby Smart just not prepared for him and he was able to light it up because of that? Who knows? I do think he's the real deal. They lose some guys defensively. They should be fine, but who knows? They could struggle. So I'm actually going to go with Washington over Alabama and I guess the Cotton Bowl. I don't like it. I see you already smiling. But Washington, I feel like compared to their last meeting when they met in the Peach Bowl in the playoff, I think Washington does have some dudes up front that can defend Bama's front 7 for a change, unlike the last meeting. Give Jake Browning some time to throw. Myles Gaskin maybe rushes, get some key runs, and they're able to keep Tua off the field. I don't know. Kind of bold.
Which running back has ever ran on Alabama?
None, but I said key runs. I didn't say run all over them. Make some key runs.
We'll see.
Yeah, like I said, I don't like it. I just don't like picking teams to, like defending champions to make the championship or defend their championship. It's just the odds are astronomical.
But one stat though, Alabama has made the national championship game in 3 of the last 4, 3 years in a row now.
3 years in a row for sure.
Okay, so yeah, they're going for 4th in a row now this year.
It's tough, man. It's tough just to get there 3 times in a row.
But when you're coached by Nick Saban, that's always possible.
I hear you, but he didn't do that, the previous, 7 years he was at Alabama.
He had when Florida State was
That's true. That's true.
When on top of the football world, and Alabama was sort of limited in talent. We had not limited in talent, but Blake Sims was our quarterback, which I don't think was that great of a quarterback. I mean, he was a great quarterback. I don't think he's like McCarron or Tua level kind of quarterback. However, I do believe Alabama's right now loaded with talent. I mean, their recruiting has gone to another level.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm not disputing that, but I think the roles are reversed. Usually they're loaded with talent defensively. Not that they're not loaded with talent offensively. It's just usually, they got dudes all over the field defensively. But now it's like, oh, man, their offense is what's loaded. So that's just all I
look out for that offense, especially all the receivers. They were all freshmen last year, so They're going to be going sophomore. One of their best running backs is a sophomore this year, so they're loaded with a lot of sophomores this year.
Absolutely. I agree. So my other game, I got Clemson and Wisconsin. I'm going with Clemson. I think that defensive line is going to be able to challenge Wisconsin's offensive line. I think Clemson moves on. Washington, Clemson in my championship. I'm going with Clemson. They got the best combination of offensive line and defensive line in the country. The only team that comes close is probably Alabama. They got a pretty good quarterback in Kelly Bryant. Dabo knows how to win those games, obviously. They're going to have a good defense. They're loaded with talent offensively. I think that's a fair pick.
Okay, that's a fair pick. Here's I was going to ask you a question, actually. Do you think if Saban was to ever retire, would Dabo be the front runner for the Alabama job? Yes or no? You say no.
No, he'll be the front runner. I don't think he'd take it.
Okay.
No, I think Bama would probably make a call. I don't think he'd take it. Or he'd take it. He wouldn't take the job.
Okay. I wanted to see your take on that, because I get a lot of mixed results on
what can he do at Alabama he's not already doing at Clemson?
Well, it comes back. It's sort of like Kirby Smart. You're leading your alma mater. Alabama is, lives, breathes, and dies football. And
that's a little different. He was in Nick Saban's shadow at Alabama. Just a chance to really prove yourself. Be a head coach. That's kind of what's different. Dabo's already a head coach, and he's winning games at Clemson. Just unlikely. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just think it's unlikely he'll leave for Alabama.
Well, I think he'll definitely get that first call if you really want.
Without a doubt, I'll give you that one.
He'll be the first one to get offered the job, and I feel like if winning for your home is a big thing for him, which it might be because he gets the chance to come back home. If that's a big deal to him, I think he'll take it.
I'm not saying it's impossible. I just think it's a little unlikely.
Yeah, he does have a good situation right now at Clemson. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Week 1 is going on right now, but let's go ahead and get into some picks starting tomorrow. We got San Diego State at Stanford. The Cardinal lost to them last year. Stanford Cardinal, that is. Stanford is a 14.5-point favorite. Who do you like?
We'll go with Stanford getting revenge.
Stanford getting revenge. All right, let me write these down. I'm going to keep track of all of our guest picks this year.
Okay.
All right, so Nader has Stanford over San Diego State. Do you think they cover the spread? 14.5?
I'm gonna say it'll be a 10-point game, so I'm gonna say no.
Okay. Ole Miss against Texas Tech in Houston. Texas Tech is a 2.5-point favorite.
Go with Texas Tech.
Okay. I thought you'd go SEC. What's that?
I don't like Ole Miss this year, so I'm going to go with Texas Tech.
I really thought you were going to go Ole Miss. I thought you were going to go SEC.
Not this year, no.
Is Texas Tech going to cover that 2.5-point spread?
Yes, I think Texas Tech will win by 10.
Okay. I actually meant to make my picks as well. San Diego State at Stanford. I'm going with Stanford as well. I'm going to say they'll even cover. I'll say they win by about 21.
Okay.
I think they pull away late. San Diego State's a tricky opponent. Ole Miss against Texas Tech. I'm going Texas Tech as well. This is actually the first year, and who knows how long, Texas Tech might have a decent defense by Big 12 standards. And if there's anything Cliff Kingsbury can do, it's build an offense, even though he lost his starting quarterback from last year and some receivers. So I think they'll get it done. I don't know much about Ole Miss this year. I've seen people pick them to make a bowl game, but they can't make a bowl game because they're under sanctions and they don't have a quarterback. So
Exactly.
yeah,
When you don't have a quarterback, I feel like your chances are limited if you don't have a quarterback.
Absolutely. Oregon State at Ohio State. The only reason I have this is because Ohio State right now is a 38-point favorite over Oregon State.
I'm going to say Ohio State will win it. I don't think they'll cover 38. Usually I've seen several games where Ohio State sort of gives that underdog team a chance to hang in there. I don't know which team it was in years past. It might have been Youngstown State or someone where they were just creeping in the game, going into the third quarter. It might have been Troy, actually, where they were just hanging around in the third quarter. It was like a touchdown game, and all of a sudden Ohio State won by 20, but I don't think they'll win by 30. I think it'll be like a 26-7 game.
Okay. I'm going with Ohio State as well. That's a no-brainer. But the 38-point favorite is what's interesting. That's just too much for a fellow Power 5 team.
Right.
I got to go. Ohio State will win and win handily, but Oregon State I think will cover.
At least, yeah. And you said fellow Power 5 team.
Yeah.
I feel like Oregon State should at least have enough talent to maybe put up a touchdown or two.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Texas against Maryland in Landover, Maryland, where the Redskins play, so a neutral site. Texas is a 13.5-point favorite.
I like how you say neutral site in Maryland.
Well, it's basically Washington, D.C.
Well, but still, I would look at it as like mainly a Maryland home game. That's like sort of like Bama playing in Birmingham against like Tennessee, something like that. But as far as the predictions go, I think Texas will be a surprise team this year. I think they're going to improve with Tom Herman. I do think Tom Herman's a good coach, and I do think he'll turn around that program. I do think they'll cover that. And then I believe they lost to Maryland last year as well.
Yes.
So I do think they'll get revenge this year, and I do think they'll beat them by 17. So, yes, I do think they'll cover.
Yeah, I actually agree. I'm going to take Texas to win and to cover. There's been a lot of drama surrounding Maryland. We didn't even mention that for Ohio State. No Urban Meyer, so yeah, I feel even better about Oregon State covering. But anyway, Maryland has had a lot of drama surrounding them this offseason. There's rumors their coach could be fired over some, I don't know, tough conditions. They apparently chew their kids out and use harsh language. I don't know. It's apparently pretty bad from what I hear, but don't really know what to expect from Maryland. I do think Texas is going to be pretty good. I say 8 or 9 win team at the least. I like Texas to win and to cover.
I agree.
FAU at Oklahoma. Lane Kiffin got FAU rolling against Oklahoma in Norman. Oklahoma 21-point favorite.
Oklahoma will win cover-wise. I think FAU will keep it close, especially with Oklahoma having a new quarterback. I think Oklahoma wins by 13.
Okay. We actually have the same. I'm going to go Oklahoma to win, but I'm going to say FAU keeps it close. I'm going to say like a 34-17 game. Oklahoma kind of pulls away at the end. It makes the score worse than it really was.
Something like that, yeah.
Hang on, I'm writing it down.
I do think FAU is pretty strong for a subdivision team or like a non-Power 5 team.
Tennessee against my Mountaineers, West Virginia Mountaineers, in Charlotte, North Carolina. West Virginia is a 10-point favorite.
I'm going to say West Virginia wins by 17. Like, this Tennessee team, I do believe, is very weak this year. It's one of their weaker teams. I do think it'll take them a couple of years until they load up on some talent with a new coach and have them back up to where they should be. West Virginia, Heisman quarterback, I do think West Virginia should win this one.
Yeah, we're in the same boat. I'm going with my Mountaineers to win. A lot of people are saying, like, this could get ugly. The more I think about it, the more I think it could get ugly. Something tells me, though, it's going to be close. I think Tennessee kind of hangs around. And West Virginia, again, another game where I think the favorite will pull away and win by, I think they'll cover, but I think they win by about 13 or 14, like a 34-20 game.
Right around the cover.
Yeah. Michigan at Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a 1-point favorite.
It's a good game. Go with the Irish this year.
Really?
With the Irish.
Going with the Irish. If I could have a lock this week, I'm going with Michigan. That is my lock of the week. Notre Dame lost 2 very good offensive linemen, and Mike McGlinchey and Quentin Nelson to the draft, both top 10 picks. They lose their leading rusher from last year. A lot riding on their quarterback, and I think he's terrible. And like I said, I think this is Harbaugh's best team. This could be Harbaugh's best team since he's been at Michigan. So I think Michigan will win. I'm not going to say that they dominate, but I think they win like 24-20.
I do think it's going to be a very close game. But this is, I believe, Brian Kelly's. He's on the hot seat. He needs to deliver.
Both of these coaches, I think, are on the hot seat.
Okay, I will agree with that. Okay, yeah, I would say Jim Harbaugh's on the hot seat, but maybe that home field advantage could play a difference.
That's true.
Who knows? I don't know. We'll see.
I'm going with the Wolverines, though. Louisville. Okay, so this is your game. Louisville against Bama, I already know, and Orlando. Bama is a 24.5-point favorite.
So I'm going to say this is the lock of the day, and Bama wins by 30.
Yeah, I did not. I changed my pick for lock of the week. It's going to be Alabama over Louisville. I think Bama wins, and I think they'll cover. Bama always tends to dominate these, neutral site games. The only one that was close was my Mountaineers, West Virginia, against them in Atlanta a few years ago. That was really the only game that was that close.
I was at that game.
I was at that game as well.
The only reason that game was close was because of Blake Sims. If Blake Sims was not the quarterback, and let's say A.J. McCarron was the quarterback, or who was the quarterback after Blake Sims? I'm having
Coker?
Coker. Well, yeah, I thought Coker should have started that game instead of Blake Sims. I liked Coker all along over Blake Sims. But if you had A.J. McCarron starting, or if you had Coker or Jalen Hurts starting, I think that game could have been different. But Blake Sims,
Yeah. Blake Sims was not very good. But there's a part of me that wants to say Louisville's going to cover. Again, this is a Power 5 opponent. 24.5 is an awful lot. Bobby Petrino's a good coach. But they lose Lamar Jackson. They have some decent receivers, but no one to throw them the ball. I just don't see a scenario where Louisville keeps this within 24.5. I think Bama wins, just barely covers, maybe 25, wins by 25.
Okay. It's fair enough. But also remember, Alabama week 1 tends to do very good. They show up very good on week 1s, especially against Michigan, Florida State, USC, 3 that come to my mind.
No, I'm in agreement. I think they're going to dominate. Just 24.5 is just an awful lot. So I think they cover just barely.
Barely.
Just barely. Just barely cover it. That's still a wide-ass margin, man. Yeah. I don't know what else you want from me. BYU at Arizona. Arizona is a 11.5-point favorite.
Go with Arizona by a touchdown.
Okay. We actually have the same thing. I'm going Arizona as well to win, but I think BYU keeps it close. They're a tricky team that always manages to keep games close.
They're one of those, I would say, Cinderella, upset material teams. So I will say, they hang around and keep it respectable at least.
All right, so Miami against LSU. In Arlington, Texas, Jerry World, Miami is a 3.5-point favorite.
I'm going to say Miami wins by 10.
Really? 10?
I do think they're just more talented. I think LSU will have the home field advantage.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
I do think Miami has more talent on the team than LSU does, and they have a better coach.
Talent-wise, I think you're wrong. I think it's LSU. Coaching, though, matters, and Miami's got it with Mark Richt. I thought hiring Ed Orgeron was a mistake for LSU.
I don't know how he has a job as a head coach.
I understand why they did it, but that was a huge mistake. I like Miami to win as well. I think it's going to be close. I think Miami wins, but I think LSU covers. I think Miami wins by a field goal.
Okay.
the Labor Day game, Virginia Tech at Florida State. Seminoles are a 7-point favorite.
I want to say Virginia Tech upsets Florida State by a field goal.
We've been pretty spot on. I got the same thing. I'm going with the Hokies. I like Justin Fuente as a head coach, and I don't really know what to expect of Willie Taggart at Florida State. I think that place is going to be rocking. They got a lot of talent, but Virginia Tech just plays sound football, man. They always have a good defense.
Last year they played in the Labor Day game as well, and I believe it was Ohio State they played the first game last year or the year before.
It was actually West Virginia last year.
Okay,
it wasn't the Labor Day game. It was the Sunday night game.
Okay, so yeah, it was one year they played Ohio State. They were.
You're right. That was 2015, I believe. That was when Ohio State had like Joey Bosa and Braxton Miller and all those guys.
Yeah, I remember Cardell Jones was the quarterback, and it was the year after they won the national championship, and Virginia Tech, I believe, started out pretty hot, and I believe somebody got hurt. I don't remember who, but somebody got hurt, and then Ohio State blew the doors out of the game.
I want to say that sounds right. They ended up dominating. Like the score looked worse, but I think you're right. I think Virginia Tech held their own for a while.
And I believe Virginia Tech's a lot more talented. The crowd's amazing. Probably one of the best crowds in the whole country.
But that game's actually going to be at Florida State, not Tallahassee, not Blacksburg.
Okay, so the Florida State, they do have good crowds. But like you said, Willie Taggart first game, I don't know. That's a big downgrade from Jimbo Fisher. So
yeah, and I do like Willie Taggart, but it is a downgrade from Jimbo Fisher. Game of the week, Washington against Auburn. In Atlanta, Auburn is a 1.5-point favorite. I reckon I know who you're going to pick, but go ahead.
It's probably not who you think I'm going to pick. It's a tough one. I think I'm going to go with Auburn, actually.
Damn. I did not see that coming. I thought you were going to go with Washington.
I say Auburn by a field goal. Auburn tends to find ways to get lucky in these certain games, and I always dub them as the luckiest team in all of college football, as always. They find ways to win when they're least expected to. They have a good quarterback of their own. I do think they have good talent on the team, even with them losing their top running back. I do think they have other talents on their team. I am SEC biased a little bit. I always do believe SEC has the best teams. And I believe this is where the case will show where the SEC is the best conference in the country.
All right. The one aspect of this game that really worries me is the 3:30 kick for Washington. That's a 3-hour difference. I'm sure they've been practicing, to prepare for that kind of thing. The jet lag and the time difference. I'm sure it's not going to be that big of an issue, but that's a 12:30 kick for them. So that's one aspect I would be a little bit worried about. But, like you said, this is a game usually Auburn tends to pull off. It's just those games where you're like, man, this is tough. I might go with the upset, and then Auburn kind of surprises you and pulls it out of their ass necessarily, but they get it done.
Somehow.
Yeah. But I'm going to go with Washington. I'm going to go with the Huskies. Just from a coaching standpoint, I like my dude Chris Peterson. I think he's a much better coach than Gus Malzahn. They got two great quarterbacks. Jake Browning's obviously pretty good as well. Jarrett Stidham is obviously good too. But I'm going to go with Jake Browning. Like I said, though, when I picked them to beat Alabama in the playoff, for the first time in a long time, I think they have some dudes up front that can block these SEC defensive fronts. And the SEC's loaded with teams with great defensive fronts, including Auburn. I think they have guys that can actually block them, keep Jake Browning upright. They got a left tackle that's going to go probably in the top 10 in the draft, Trey Adams. I think they get it done and get the upset in Atlanta, but it's going to be close. I say by like a field goal.
It'll definitely be a close game, but it's going to be something where it'll be tough either way.
And I should say I'm not confident in it. I'm going to go with Washington. I'm not that confident in it, even though I love Chris Peterson.
It can go either way.
Yep. So poll question. I guess we can talk about this, even though we already just went through our picks. But which Week 1 matchup in college football are you looking forward to the most? And I did not include your Alabama Crimson Tide.
Okay, well, if it's me, I would pick that. But if I would say as a neutral fan, I'd probably say
Neutral
Auburn against
fan.
Washington.
Yeah, I got the same thing. Washington and Auburn. Some great
That's for
slate of
playoff
games.
implications. They're both top 10. I believe that's the most with the playoff implications. And maybe down the line, if both are one-loss teams, that's maybe a game where they'll look back and be like, oh, this team beat this team. And that's where these games are very crucial.
Or, they both sneak in and meet up again. Who knows?
But yeah, it can always happen as well.
Absolutely. All right, man. Thank you for coming on. We actually kept it pretty short today, considering we had about 20 minutes of, technical difficulties trying to get this thing started?
Yeah.
Yeah. But, thank you. Absolutely. Thank you for coming on at the last minute. I texted you, I think, at 5 o'clock. Hey, man, can you come on? Yeah, sure. I'll do it. So, huge thank you. And I wanted to get you on to make up because I told you I'd do a fantasy football preview show, and we never got around to it. I've been busy. I've been meaning to tell you that I'm sorry for that, and I thought, might as well do it today. And I'll invite him on to the show.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, man. It's always fun, and we had a good football talk, and let the games begin. It's going to be a fun season.
It's here. Football's back, man.
Absolutely.
I had my epiphany last week, and it felt – what was the line I used with James? He thought it was fucking hilarious. Let me find it. It went so far back. Okay. We were talking about, I mentioned, man, I just realized football's back next week. And I said, I've been pretty much in an emotionless coma since Aaron Rodgers and Will Grier got hurt last season. I'm experiencing the beauty of life now that I'm outside the darkness for the first time in months. And I tell you what, my friend, it is glorious.
It's finally that time of the year where that wait is over.
Yes.
That brutal wait, well, in your case, for Will Grier and then Aaron Rodgers, yes. That 8-month layover.
Oh, my God. That was fucking miserable from November, because that's when Will Grier got hurt. From November until now, I have just been, emotionless. I do not give a shit about, I just didn't give a shit anymore about football. Even though I watched the games, I podcasted about it, and then, football just felt like an afterthought. Yeah, it's coming back. Oh, Green Bay ought to be good. Oh, yeah, I guess West Virginia could be pretty good, too. I was like, that's down the line. Then it's here.
Now that it's here.
Yeah.
It's now here.
It's now here. Absolutely.
It's hitting you like a ton of bricks when it's actually just here, and it's this weekend that's starting, and then the following week it's NFL that's starting.
Yeah, and I actually meant to blog about a lot of stuff, dark horses in college football, offensive rookies, defensive rookies to watch out for in the NFL. And I had it typed up in my blog as a draft, and I just kept putting it off, and I'm like, man, I still got time. And I was like, oh, shit, that starts next week. I'm not going to be able to do this. So it definitely snuck up on me.
Absolutely, but it's going to be a fun time. Before you know it, basketball is going to be hitting us in a couple months. So fall's always the best time for sports.
I agree. You got the baseball postseason, college football, NFL, NHL, and NBA start, and then college basketball starts in November.
So it's
the weather's changing, leaves are changing. It's getting a little colder. You're starting to put on hoodies. Thanksgiving, just all that shit, man. It's awesome.
All that good activity.
Absolutely. But, all right, I'll let you go. Thank you for coming on, though.
Appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
All right, man. You too.
Yep.
Take it easy.